What's going on, guys? It's Bromley, and I'm going to answer a common question from many of you. This is why I can't get stronger. We're going to go down the 5 reasons that you are not progressing in strength, why, despite your seemingly best efforts, things seem to get stagnant. This is specifically the novice edition because what stops new lifters in their tracks when it comes to growth tends to be a little bit different than what happens down the road as you get more developed. So, this is why I can't get stronger novice edition. 5 big tips. Real quick, we have the SoCal Summer Strongman Challenge coming. If you or anyone you know wants to get your feet wet in regards to competing in Strongman, or if you're in the area and you want to come down and watch, Empire Barbell, Redlands, California, we're hosting a Strongman contest at the end of August 2021. So check that out. More details to come. I will put the link to that contest in the description. Also, Peak Strength. I just got the formatting back for Amazon and for the Kindle store, so we'll have it in paperback. We'll have it on the Amazon store. You can get it right now at empirebarbellstore.com. We talk a lot about specialization, a lot about more advanced things you'll need to know as you develop in your training career. So I'm really happy with the way it came out. So go ahead and check that out. So getting into this list, we're going to start with thing number 1, why I can't get stronger. Not training consistently. That's probably the number one thing that novices or new lifters or people that want to kind of get into the strength training realm, get the ball rolling with regards to their own physical development, that's where they mostly fall short. That's probably the biggest one. To get stronger, to get more conditioned, or to lose weight, or to do anything physically, you have to establish a baseline of work, and that has to be a theme moving forward, because everything you're going to do down the road that's going to keep those gains coming is going to be building off that baseline you set up. So it's not just enough to be really attached to the end goal or to the idea of what being bigger or stronger or leaner is. You really have to love the process. You have to enjoy training. It has to be something you look forward to. It has to be so automatic that if you get a week where you don't train, you feel kind of off. You feel like something's missing. That doesn't mean you live morning, noon, and night just to be in a gym and start moving iron, but it does mean that it's this habit that you commit to, that a couple times a week for 45 minutes to an hour, hour and a half, you set aside time to go train. People put it early in the morning as a way to kick off their day, and then they can spend the rest of their day being productive. Some people prefer to get the hard stuff out of the way, get their life obligations out of the way, and train later at night when they don't have to worry about anything. So it's up to you. Find a spot where you can train conveniently, but it has to be consistent. And the consistency, it just depends on what you're used to doing. It's not like there's some magic amount of work you have to commit to. If you are new to training, you only need a couple times a week as a minimum, but you don't have to be in the gym 5 days a week. Don't commit to something you are not likely to follow through with. There are a lot of easy novice programs that only have you going, about 3 days a week. And if you can commit to that 45 minutes to an hour of training, that's the minimum you need to get the ball rolling. You just have to be consistent, show up, prioritize it, schedule it. If you're not doing that, that simply means you aren't that committed to the end result. Point number 2, not having a plan. Now, the thing with novices and with new lifters is they get strong from just about anything. The way your body adapts is you have homeostasis, which is like your baseline. That's a normal amount of energy you expend, the normal amount of work you can handle. The human body is like right here. The average sedentary human is about right here. We're artificially low. So just like if you weigh 900 pounds, you're artificially heavy. That means it's very, very, very easy to start to lose weight once you start incorporating normal habits. And in the beginning, it comes rapidly. And then as you get closer to kind of a natural baseline, it gets harder and harder. You have to be more precise. Same thing with strength training. Starting out, we're all artificially weak. If you have a very productive life that requires a lot of physical activity, if you're a laborer, if you use your hands, if you're in masonry, if you spend all day climbing poles or trees, or if you have some regular physical activity that is a staple in your life, you will be closer to that natural baseline. But for most people, we're way, way low, which means once we start training, we get stronger from just about everything. Novices can run into a brick wall over and over, and they will get stronger for their efforts. So you don't have to walk a tightrope, but you do need a plan. And more importantly, you need a plan that's going to get you familiar with terms like sets and reps and volume and intensity, because that's what you will need down the road if you want to keep getting stronger and eventually become competitive. So you need a plan. You need to understand how to gauge your stress levels, how to go through a workout, gauge the amount of work you did, see how that carries over into the next workout, so you can build a thread of how each workout, each week, each phase of training builds into the next one. Now, the beauty with being a novice is you don't need something that's overly complex. In fact, I recommend against it. The most simple and effective and proven systems for getting novices stronger are simple linear progressions. You're not going to do a lot better than those. There might be, with some guidance and coaching, some things you can do to get a jump on the ball. But if I only have 5 minutes and a cocktail napkin to write a program for a completely new lifter, I can write out a simple 5x5 linear progression, and they work super well. And they're great because compliance is very easy. They're so simple that it's kind of idiot proof. It's hard to mess up. It's the same movements done with a very simple progression scheme, and it gets you used to the idea of progressing through your workouts, which is important for continued growth. So that's something you need to know. If you're going in and you're doing whatever, effort for the sake of it will get you stronger to a point, but it can also shoot you in the foot, because when you stop getting stronger, you won't know which things to change because you were just winging it the whole time. So get a plan. If you are just winging it in the gym and you're not getting stronger, that's thing number one you need to fix, because you won't get stronger until you can isolate what is missing, and you need a consistent baseline of work organized in something we call a plan to make that happen. Next thing, number 3, high stress or low recovery. And this is kind of a catch-all. Recovery can be poor sleep, it could be lack of eating, it could be putting really, really hard efforts way too close together. If you're new and you get in this kind of manic phase of training where you're working out multiple times a day, and you're like, we had a girl at our gym that lost a bunch of weight, and she was super excited to kind of go through this journey of physical development. It was like she had this super big awakening, and she wanted to do all the things now that she had confidence and control over her body. She wanted to see what she could do after being really overweight for most of her life. And she ended up doing 4 days a week of powerlifting training, 5 days a week of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She was doing cardio and road work on her off days. And she very, very quickly developed a bunch of overuse issues. Now, it's very hard for novices to overtrain. You do have to take it to an extreme. It's very uncommon with weight training by itself. But if, let's say, your work is very high demand, let's say it's hard for you to get enough food, let's say your joints are taking a lot of impact throughout the week, and you're compounding that with all of these different activities, it is very possible to have stress too high and recovery too low. So take inventory. If you have a very physically demanding job, keep track of your caloric intake. Go to a calculator, get an estimate of what you're burning in a day so you know what the minimum you need to consume is to get a net positive result. Don't just cross your fingers and hope it's good enough. That will only get you over that first bump as your body adapts to that training, but that's not going to be able to consistently keep you rolling forward. You will dig yourself into a recovery hole. So again, work, analyzing your training, analyzing your sleep, analyzing your food intake. You want to have a sense of control over all these things, because you do have to have them in a specific range, or else you're going to continuously get a worse result. And people that are spreading themselves thin oftentimes see this meteoric rise after they get that straightened out. So once you do start to get better sleep and you do start to eat enough, most people think they eat enough, and they absolutely do not. So spend a day or two, make sure you eat the same thing every day so it's easier to keep track of. Spend a day or two figuring out what that breakdown is. You don't have to measure every single time, but you need to be in a ballpark. So make sure you're just not falling short, because many people fall short and they're unaware of it. Number 4, lack of effort, and also throwing low pain tolerance. Now, that's not like a judgment. We don't come into this with a really high pain tolerance, because most of us don't have lives that condition us to that. We're sedentary, we're very soft, we're very comfortable most of the time. So it's not just about a tolerance to pain, like, being able to hold your hand over a flame. A lot of it is a tolerance to being uncomfortable. I think that's very necessary across a lot of fields to be successful in life. We have to know when it's time to get out of our comfort zone and commit to it, even though we are uncomfortable. Part of the adaptive process is your body adjusting to those new demands, and you can find things that were very, very uncomfortable for a while eventually become run of the mill, and that's what we're after. We're after an adaptive response. We want our bodies to be able to mold itself to the demands we're placing upon it, and that means more muscle, less body fat, more strength, more physical ability, and on and on. So you need to come in with a lot of effort, and you need to be able to push through where you're normally uncomfortable. Now, that changes wildly for people. I would say the biggest problem with lifters is that they're not comfortable doing that, and they need to get a handle on that. They need to understand what threshold the pain and discomfort sets in. It's when your quads start burning. It's when you get out of breath. I remember when I first started to get kind of strong in a squat, once I would go over 225, I was a teenager, and I remember on heavier sets, as I would get closer to limit, I remember very clearly thinking, my legs can keep going. It's not localized muscular fatigue. It's not like, when you do a curl and then the muscle just physically can't raise the weight anymore. I absolutely had more in the tank. And I remember racking the bar because I felt like I was being smothered. It was the panicky sense of being uncomfortable as I got closer to fatigue. And I remember that kind of disturbed me. I'm like, I need to find a way to work through that. To this day, I do not get that sense. I've taken squats to the limit multiple times. It's not something you need to do all the time in training, but eventually I did get comfortable with the sensation of bearing a load on my back and getting comfortable and being able to push it closer and closer to the limit. And that sensation eventually went away because I did adapt. I did feel comfortable with weight on my back. I could continue to breathe. I could brace better. My positioning was more efficient. My legs built a tolerance to that burning sensation that kicks in. So again, part of the adaptive process is your body physically making changes to these new demands we're imposing on it. And you need to be able to run into that and not run away from it when it gets too hard. Now, on the other side of that coin, there are people that are masochists, and their problem eventually becomes that they run themselves into the dirt too much. It's not as common, but it exists, and it's a hallmark in the gym we can see of people who kind of dig themselves in a different hole because they're never letting themselves recover because it's go, 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 go. And then you get overuse issues, injuries, you get stagnation. That's a different animal. Most novices are going to find that applying the right amount of effort is difficult and it takes time to get comfortable with it. It will happen. It's just a game of showing up. Showing up is half the battle. Then once you get in that position where that voice is telling you to stop, to take your ball and go home because you got better things to do than sit here dying under a barbell, you have that talk. It's not just about getting to where you want to be, although you can think about that. You can think about your goals and how much they mean to you, but it's about testing your character. It's about being of use to the people around you. What good are you if the slightest bit of discomfort causes you to tuck your tail and run? So there is something extremely empowering in subjecting yourself to that and knowing that you lasted 5 seconds longer than you did the last time. That is hugely empowering. It changes the way you look at yourself. It changes the standards you hold for yourself. And you will start to see in the rest of your life, those things add up and you become more consistent with projects. You become more reliable to other people. You don't quit on the hard things as quickly, and you start to finish things that you started. It's a very powerful tool to be able to test yourself, but it is also essential if you do in fact want to get stronger. Thing number 5, frequently changing goals. This is another one. I keep saying all of these are the number one thing, but this is a big one, and I think we could argue about what is really the number one thing, but they're all, I think, pretty similarly common and just as insidious when it comes to sapping growth in novice or newer lifters. Shiny object syndrome. That is something that just devastates progress because you'll even get somebody who is consistent. You'll even get somebody who does work very hard and prioritizes training time, sacrifices a lot of effort. And you will get people who get stagnant all the same because they're consistently changing their goals every time they see a new exercise, every time they see a new athlete that they fall in love with and they want to look like. Today it's physique, tomorrow it's strength, then it's bodybuilding and just getting as much mass as possible. Actually, no, I want to be functional. I want to be able to do the splits and do a million burpees and on and on and on. Now, it might not even be that you get shiny object syndrome with your goals. It might be with the modes of training that you take on. You get new lifters that romanticize every single ebook, every single system of training. It's the recency effect. The last thing you saw is the thing that's at the front of your mind. And when you're in this growing phase where you're trying to get as much information as possible, you're constantly being exposed to new things. So if every ebook you see is you think the new approach, the magic approach, well, I got to do this now. It doesn't matter what approach you take. Best advice ever got, I've repeated this 100 times. Ed Cohen, greatest powerlifter of all time, when he asked about programming opinions, he dumbs it down. He makes it as simple as possible. Make it work. Best advice you can get. There are a million systems. They've all produced champions. They've all produced results. You have to tailor it to yourself, and that means getting over the learning curve, figuring out how you respond to a certain arrangement of training, figuring out how you respond to certain types of exercise, certain progression schemes. They're all different. They all have their own learning curve, and if you're hopping from one to the next, you're never making up the learning curve. You're just, I like to say, instead of going up the mountain, you're just walking around the mountain. You're doing a lot of moving, but not really going anywhere meaningful. So commit to whatever program you start. Get as much advice as you can get input from other people, but once you put something into play, commit to it, make it work. Do not change your goals every 5 minutes. If you want to get a little size, commit to actually adding size. See it on the scale. Make sure that you figured out how to do that before you decide, no, now I want to go on a cut. If you decide to go on a cut, take inventory, take the measurements, commit to cutting a certain amount of weight, do it. Make sure you hit that finish line before you switch your goals. Eventually, as time goes on, That will give you much greater insight into how these things work, how they're put together. It'll give you much greater insight into how you have to pace these things, how you can juggle them together, and you'll be able to do a lot more at once, and you'll have a more cohesive plan where you'll see bigger swings up and down with each phase that you go through. So when you do go through a mass building phase, you'll be able to commit to gaining as much mass as possible. And then when you cut, you can get as lean as possible, and you can find this cruising altitude that over time takes you to a place you never thought you could go. But you have to be consistent, you have to focus, finish what you start. So those are my 5 reasons why novice lifters, new lifters, why recreational lifters on their own who don't have a lot of coaching or mentorship or don't have a good group around them, this is why you can't get stronger. This is why you get stagnant. It is usually these simple habits that you need to really get good at anything in life. And that's why I think this is important for society in general. I mean, I think that there is getting over this hump so much benefit to the rest of your life because this is foundational stuff, and it's one of the reasons we keep sports in school. It's one of the reasons we recommend this to professionals and entrepreneurs and people that want to have more agency and empowerment in their life, because these are the habits. We're sharpening the saw here. So if you can commit to these types of activities, these types of habits, you're going to go far no matter what you choose to do. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to have the intermediate edition coming up next, and that's where we're going to get in a more programming and lift specific type of advice as to why intermediate lifters start to hit the brick wall. So again, thanks for watching. Till next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.